If the Mafia extorted businesses in the 1930s with threats and violence, what do you think billionaire funds do today, only armed with ironclad contracts and expensive ties? It is a comfortable lie we tell ourselves, like crime looks like a masked man breaking into a vault, or a gangster demanding protection money on a street corner. But what if I told you that the greatest heist in history isn't happening in the shadows of the underworld, but in the bright, fluorescent lights of high-rise offices? We are conditioned to believe that the financial system is a pillar of order, a mechanism of the free market designed to reward hard work and smart investments. But what you are about to discover now might surprise you, and it might just shatter that illusion forever. We're not talking about illegal Ponzi schemes or the rogue actions of a few bad apples. We're talking about the system itself. Think about the concept of a racket. In the old days, mobsters would squeeze a local shop owner for cash in exchange for protection. It was extortion, plain and simple. Today, that dynamic hasn't disappeared. It has evolved. It has put on a suit, learned the law better than the legislators, and rebranded itself as market efficiency. This is the white-collar mafia. And unlike the gangsters of the past, they don't break the law, they write it. They have turned the stock market into a casino where they own the house, the cards, and the dealer, while you are just hoping for a lucky break. Have you ever passed through this? You watch the news, you see the graphs go up, yet your purchasing power keeps vanishing. You play by the rules, you save, you invest where they tell you to invest, and yet, when the crash comes, you are the one left holding the bag while they toast with champagne on balconies overlooking the chaos. It feels personal because it is. This is the scam you never saw coming because it was hidden in plain sight, buried under layers of financial jargon and complex derivatives that are designed to confuse you. They rely on the fact that the average person looks at Wall Street and sees a complex machine they can't understand, rather than a predatory organism they should fear. The reality is that these massive institutions operate with a level of coordination and ruthlessness that would make Al Capone blush. They don't use Tommy guns. They use predatory short selling, algorithm-driven market manipulation, and leveraged bailouts that strip healthy companies of their assets, leaving nothing but debt and unemployment in their wake. It is a legalized form of looting. They target innovation, they target stability, and they extract value with surgical precision. And the most terrifying part, it is all technically legal. They have built a labyrinth of loopholes that allows them to transfer wealth from the working class to the ultra-elite without ever technically stealing a dime. Stay with me until the end, because we need to dissect exactly how this machinery works. You need to understand that this isn't about bad luck or poor market timing. This is about a structured, intentional transfer of wealth. When a mobster takes your wallet, you call the police. But when a hedge fund destroys a company you work for or decimates your retirement fund through high-frequency trading and dark pool tactics, who do you call? The regulators. The very people who often step through the revolving door to work for those same funds a year later. The narrative of financial freedom is often just the bait on the hook. They sell you the dream of participation while rigging the mechanics of the outcome. It creates a feeling of helplessness, the sense that no matter what you do, the house always wins. But knowledge is the one thing they cannot confiscate. To understand their game is the first step in refusing to be a pawn in it. We are about to peel back the layers of this legalized mafia. We're going to look at the specific tools they use, tools that function exactly like the lead pipes of the 1930s, but leave no bruises. The deeper we go, the more you will realize that the line between smart business and organized crime is much thinner than you think. In fact, in many boardrooms, that line doesn't exist at all. So, if the law doesn't call it a crime, what do we call it? And more importantly, how do they get away with it, year after year, cycle after cycle? The answer lies in a specific set of mechanisms that turn the market into a weapon. To understand the weapon, we first have to acknowledge the wound. It is easy to feel isolated when you are up against trillion-dollar giants, to feel like you are the only one noticing that the math just doesn't add up anymore. But looking at the reality of the system can be heavy. and it brings up a lot of frustration that we usually keep bottled up. If this subject resonates with you, leave a comment below sharing what touched a nerve. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling that no matter how hard you work, the financial goalposts keep moving further away? I want to hear your story. I read these comments because they remind us that this isn't just an abstract economic theory. These are real lives being affected. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. We are building something different here, a community that values the uncomfortable truth over the comforting lie. When you hit that like button or subscribe, you aren't just clicking a digital icon. You are sending a signal to the platform that this message matters. You are helping to expose these mechanics to someone else who might still be sleeping through the robbery, totally unaware of how the game is rigged against them. So, if you want to keep digging deeper into these mysteries with me, make sure you are subscribed. We are in this together. Now, having established the intent behind these organizations, we have to look at the execution. Because they don't just rely on general influence. They have a very specific playbook. The first page of that playbook involves a tactic so cunning that most people thank them for doing it, not realizing it is the very thing draining their accounts. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because to understand the monster that stands before us today, we have to look at the embryo from which it grew. We often look at the financial system as something sterile born in universities and perfected in glass towers. But the hidden truth is that the operational model used by the giants of the market shares ADN, a sequence almost identical to the organizations that the FBI spent decades trying to dismantle. We are talking about a transformation that occurred not when Wall Street became honest, but when crime realized it needed to become corporate to survive. Think back to the early 20th century. The United States enacted prohibition, the ley seca. The government believed that by banning alcohol, they would purify society. But what they actually did was create the greatest market opportunity in history for those willing to ignore the rules. It was in this chaos that the criminal startup was born. Before this, crime was disorganized street thugs, petty thieves, isolated incidents. But the impact of prohibition was that it required scale. You couldn't just smuggle a bottle. You needed fleets of trucks, warehouses, payrolls for drivers, bribes for police, and lawyers on retainer. Does that sound familiar? It should. It was the birth of the modern corporation, just operating in the shadows. Al Capone and the architects of the syndicate didn't just sell booze. They invented logistics criminal. They understood supply chains, territory management, and hostile takeovers long before those terms became buzzwords in NBA programs. But here is the critical shift in mindset that we need to grasp. Al Capone used violence to enforce his monopoly. It was messy, it was loud, and it drew attention. Wall Street looked at that model and realized that violence was inefficient. Why break someone's legs when you can just break their bank account? Why use a Tommy gun when you can use a complex derivative? Al Capone invented criminal logistics. Wall Street transformed that logistics into market mathematics. They took the same principles, eliminating competition, controlling the flow of goods, and fixing the price, and they washed it through the legal system. This is the journey from the back alley to the boardroom. The syndicate became the fund, the territory became the market share, and the bribe became lobbying. It is a refinement of the predator's instinct, polished until it shines. This brings us to a concept that is absolutely essential for you to understand if you want to protect your assets: the architecture of scarcity. In the 1920s, the mob made millions because alcohol was scarce. But that scarcity was artificial. It was created by a law. The mob didn't create the product. They controlled the access to it. Today, high finance operates on this exact same principle. They rely on creating periods of artificial chaos and scarcity to drive desperation. When you see a market crash or a sudden spike in oil prices, or a housing bubble that prices you out of a home, you aren't witnessing the accidental ebb and flow of a free market. You are witnessing the architecture of scarcity in action. They engineer the decisions that lead to the crisis, because they are the only ones positioned to buy up the wreckage when the dust settles. There is a cycle of harvest. They harvest your fear, they harvest your panic selling, and they harvest the assets you are forced to liquidate at a loss. Behind the scenes, the discussions in the frantic trading pits of Chicago in the 80s or the silent, server-filled rooms of New York today aren't about how to help the economy grow. They are about how to corner a market. The revelations that come out of whistleblowers often show us that these institutions view the average investor not as a partner, but as the resource to be mined. The smart money isn't smart because they are geniuses. They are smart because they have seen the cards before they are dealt. This historical context is not just trivia, it is the map. If you look at the structure of a cartel, you see a hierarchy designed to insulate the bosses from the crimes committed on the street. Now, look at a major investment bank. You have the traders taking the risks, the middle management pushing the quotas, and the executives insulating themselves with plausible deniability. The structure is identical because the goal is identical: the accumulation of power and wealth by any means necessary, short of getting caught. Understanding this journey changes how you view the news. When a bank gets fined a few $1 million for defrauding customers of billions, that isn't a punishment, that is a business expense. It's the cost of doing business, just like the mobster paying off the local precinct captain. The fine is just a tax on the profit of the crime. And because the profits are so astronomical, the behavior never changes. It is a calculated decision. They have run the numbers and the math says crime pays as long as you wear a suit. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. It's not just about how they structure their organizations. It's about the specific instruments they use to bleed the system dry. We have established that they operate like a cartel, but a cartel needs a product. And in the modern era, the product isn't alcohol or narcotics. The product is debt. The product is volatility. The product is your own financial future packaged into a security and sold to someone else who is betting you will fail. We are moving into a territory now that might make you uncomfortable because it challenges the very safety of the money you have in your bank account right now. The mechanisms of control have become invisible, digital, and instantaneous. And as we peel back this next layer, I want you to ask yourself, who actually owns the money you think is yours? The answer is far more complex than a name on a debit card. This realization is heavy, I know. It shifts the ground beneath your feet. But realizing the game is rigged is the only way to stop losing. We are walking through the history of the heist to understand the mechanics of the getaway car. And believe me, the engine is still running. Drop a comment below. I see the pattern. Let's verify that you are tracking this evolution from the physical violence of the past to the financial violence of the present. Because what comes next is the specific blueprint of how they execute this today. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because understanding the history is just the foundation. The real shock comes when we look at the transformation of these crude methods into the sophisticated, invisible machinery that governs the global economy today. We are crossing the bridge from the smoky backrooms of the Prohibition era to the silent, air-conditioned servers of the modern financial district. And this is where the story gets terrifyingly real. We often think of organized crime as something that happens outside the system, a parasitic force attacking the host. But what we are witnessing now is the parasite becoming the host. The mechanisms used by the Mafia, the Yakuza, and the cartels haven't been eradicated. They have been assimilated. They have been polished, digitized, and codified into law. Let's talk about the concept of the safe house. In the old days, if you had dirty money, you buried it or hid it in a Swiss bank account physically. It was a clumsy process. Today, that concept has evolved into the corporate tax haven. This is one of the most significant revelations about how modern wealth operates. We are not talking about a suitcase of cash anymore. We are talking about a keystroke. The hidden truth is that major corporations and financial institutions have created a parallel dimension for money. In places like the Cayman Islands or Delaware, You can find a single building, sometimes just a mailbox, that is the legal headquarters for thousands of companies. This is the modern version of the mob safe house. But instead of hiding from the police, they are hiding from social responsibility. They use these jurisdictions not just to avoid taxes, but to break the chain of accountability. If a company poisons a river or crashes an economy, good luck suing a shell company that exists only on paper in a jurisdiction that doesn't share records. This connects directly to the mindset of laundering. Historically, money laundering was about taking dirty cash from drugs or gambling and filtering it through a cash-heavy business, like a laundromat or a casino, to make it look clean. Today, the financial elite have taken this concept and turned it into an art form called financial structuring. They don't use laundromats. They use a labyrinth of holding companies and trusts. Imagine a Russian nesting doll. You open the first doll, it's a limited liability company. You open that one, it's a trust. Inside the trust is a foundation. Inside the foundation is another corporation registered in Panama. By the time you get to the center to find out who actually owns the money, the trail is so cold and complex that no regulator has the budget or the time to follow it. This isn't illegal. It's asset protection. But the impact is identical to laundering. It separates the profit from the source, making the money untouchable. Then we have the evolution of extortion. This is perhaps the most disturbing parallel. Think about the Japanese Yakuza. For decades, they practiced a form of corporate blackmail called sakayo. They would buy enough shares in a company to attend the shareholder meeting, and then threaten to reveal embarrassing secrets or disrupt the meeting unless they were paid off. It was crude, effective, and illegal. Now, look at how certain predatory hedge funds operate today. They don't threaten to yell at a meeting. Instead, they engage in short and distort campaigns. They place a massive bet that a company's stock will fall, short selling, and then they release a report or spread rumors questioning the company's accounting or leadership. They create the panic, the stock crashes, and they walk away with millions in profit. The company might be destroyed, jobs lost, but the fund wins. Is this technically extortion? Legally, no. It's market research and free speech, but the mechanic is the same, applying pressure to extract value, regardless of the destruction left behind. We have to face the bastidors, the backstage reality of this theater. The reason this persists is that the criminals of the past made a mistake. They tried to fight the law. The financial architects of today realized it is much cheaper to buy the law. This is where the famous phrase comes in, ringing louder than ever. Crime didn't disappear, it just got better lawyers. This is the ultimate adaptation. Why risk jail time when you can hire a lobbyist to write a loophole into the tax code that makes your scheme perfectly legal? The crime ceases to be a crime when the perpetrator holds the pen that writes the rules. This brings us to the most critical mechanism of all, the transfer of risk. In a traditional criminal enterprise, the criminal bears the risk. If a drug deal goes bad, the dealer loses the product or goes to jail. But in the modern financial system, the white-collar mafia has successfully inverted this natural law. They keep the profits, but they transfer the risk to you. We saw this clearly in 2008, and we see it in every bailout since. When their high-risk bets pay off, they buy yachts. When their bets fail and the system threatens to collapse, the taxpayer foots the bill to save the economy. It is the perfect crime. A casino where if you win, you keep the chips, and if you lose, the house gives you your money back. This creates a profound distortion in the journey of wealth. Hard work and innovation are no longer the primary drivers of success in this upper echelon. Leverage and access are. The system is designed to act as a one-way valve, allowing wealth to flow up, but preventing it from trickling down. And the most brilliant trick they ever pulled was convincing the world that this complexity is necessary. They hide behind jargon, complicated derivatives, and high-frequency trading algorithms because complexity is the ultimate camouflage. If you can't understand what they are doing, you can't question it. They rely on your fatigue. They rely on you thinking, well, they must know what they are doing. But now that we are peeling back these layers, the picture becomes clear. It is not a system of chaotic, free market forces. It is a system of controlled extraction. The decisions that move markets are often made long before the opening bell rings. The influence they wield isn't just financial. It's political, it's social, and it's structural. They don't need to put a horse head in your bed because they can just raise your interest rates. They don't need to break your knees because they can foreclose on your future. As we continue to dissect this, remember that awareness is the only weapon they can't defend against. They thrive in the dark, in the apathy of the public. By shining a light on these revelations, we are disrupting their most valuable asset, their anonymity. The bridge between the street thug and the CEO is shorter than we want to admit, and recognizing that similarity is the first step in protecting yourself from the fallout of their games. Drop a comment below with just one phrase, "I see the invisible." Let me know that you are grasping the scale of this structural setup, because next, we need to talk about the specific engine that keeps this whole machine running. A tool so powerful it dictates the rhythm of your daily life without you even knowing it. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because we need to confront a reality that is uncomfortable but necessary to accept if we want to navigate this world with our eyes open. We tend to look at the massive financial scandals of the last few decades, the headlines that flash across our screens for a week and then disappear as glitches in the matrix. We tell ourselves that these were accidents, mistakes made by a few greedy individuals who got carried away, or errors in an otherwise perfect algorithm. But the hidden truth is far more disturbing. These are not bugs in the operating system. They are features. We are witnessing the era of institutionalized crime, where fraud isn't an anomaly to be corrected, but a routine regulatory practice to be managed. Think about the sheer scale of the transformation that has taken place in our collective mindset. If a teenager steals a pair of sneakers, we call it a crime, and the justice system acts with swift, crushing weight. But when a conglomerate manipulates the interest rates of the entire global economy, affecting the mortgages and student loans of millions of people, we call it a market inefficiency, and settle it with a fine that amounts to a rounding error on their quarterly balance sheet. This is the double standard that defines our times. Let's look at the Libor scandal. For those who might not know, LIBOR was the benchmark interest rate that banks charged each other for short-term loans. It sounds boring, technical, almost irrelevant to your daily life. But that number dictated the interest rates on hundreds of trillions of dollars in financial products worldwide, from your credit card to the national debt of entire countries. For years, we trusted that this number was set by the free market. But the revelations that came out showed us that a group of traders at the world's biggest banks were simply messaging each other, rigging the rate up or down to suit their daily bets. They were fixing the price of money itself. This wasn't a victimless crime. It was a global tax levied by the banks on everyone else. And what was the impact? Did these institutions crumble? Did the CEOs go to prison? No. They paid fines, admitted no wrongdoing in many cases, and continued operations. The scandal was absorbed, digested, and forgotten. And then, of course, there is the shadow of 2008 that still hangs over us. This wasn't just a housing bubble that burst. It was a manufactured catastrophe. We saw the creation of toxic financial products, mortgage-backed securities filled with loans they knew would fail. They took these ticking time bombs, paid rating agencies to stamp them with AAA ratings, the gold standard of safety, and sold them to pension funds and municipal governments. These were the retirement savings of teachers, firefighters, and factory workers. And while they were selling this toxicity out the front door, they were betting against it out the back door. They were shorting their own clients. This is the definition of a rigged game. It's not just unethical, it's predatory. Yet, when the dust settled and millions of families lost their homes, the narrative wasn't about criminal justice. It was about systemic risk. We were told they were too big to fail. This phrase is perhaps the greatest admission of defeat a society can make. It essentially says that these institutions have grown so large and so parasitic that to remove them would kill the host. So, instead of punishment, they receive the bailout. The journey of that money is sickening, from the taxpayer's pocket, through the government, and right back into the bonuses of the executives who caused the crash. This is where the concept of administrative infractions becomes the ultimate shield. In the world of high finance, a crime is only a crime if you are poor. For the giants, illegal acts are simply converted into business expenses. Imagine if you could rob a bank of $100,000 and the penalty was a $10,000 fine, and you gotta keep the rest. Would you stop robbing banks? Of course not. You would rob as many as you could, as fast as you could. You would factor the fine into your budget. That is exactly what happens on Wall Street. The fines are not punishments. They are the government's cut of the loot. It is a fee for the license to cheat. We have to look at the bastidors, the backstage machinery, to understand why this persists. It persists because the line between the regulator and the regulated has been erased. The people writing the rules today are the ones who will be hired by the banks tomorrow to exploit those same rules. It's a revolving door that ensures the game never actually stops. The decisions made in Washington or London are often just echoes of the desires of New York. This normalization of fraud creates a profound sense of dissonance. We follow the rules, we pay our taxes, we drive the speed limit, and yet we watch the architects of financial ruin toast to their success. It challenges our belief in fairness. But realizing this isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming aware. You cannot play a game effectively if you don't know the real rules. And the real rule here is that for the institutional players, the law is malleable. It is a clay they shape to fit their needs. The message central to all of this is stark. It is not a failure of the system. It is the system. The system is designed to extract wealth from the many and concentrate it in the hands of the few, and it is functioning perfectly according to that design. The complexity, the jargon, the "oops, we made a mistake" apologies, it's all theater. Beneath the surface, the machine is running exactly as it was built to run. This perspective shifts your entire journey as an investor or just as a citizen. You stop looking for the good guys to come save the day and realize that you have to become your own defense. You have to understand that when a bank offers you a product, they are not your advisor, they are your counterparty. Their win is often your loss. As we stare into this abyss of institutionalized corruption, it's easy to feel small, but there is power in seeing the strings. There is power in refusing to accept the sanitized version of events they feed us on the nightly news. We are peeling back the curtain, and what we find is not incompetence, but a cold, calculated efficiency in transferring value. And this leads us to wonder if the system is rigged, and the regulators are captured, and the fines are just the cost of doing business. Where is the safe harbor? Is there any part of this financial landscape that isn't compromised? The answer lies in understanding the one thing they cannot control, the one variable that always threatens to topple their house of cards. Drop a comment below. The system is rigged. Let me know if you are seeing the matrix for what it really is, because now we need to pivot to the final piece of this puzzle, the part that affects your wallet directly. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because we are arriving at the core of the issue, the very heart of the machine. Until now, we have discussed the tactics, the history, and the specific mechanisms of manipulation. But those are just the symptoms. The real disease, the hidden truth that most people are terrified to admit, is the fundamental nature of the business model itself. We have to strip away the varnish of respectability, the glossy annual reports, and the CNBC interviews, and look at the naked reality of what Wall Street actually is. When you analyze the operational structure without the bias of prestige, you are left with a startling conclusion. It operates exactly like a highly efficient criminal organization, but with one crucial difference: it has been granted absolute immunity. We are taught from a young age to believe in the free market. It is a concept almost as sacred as democracy itself. We are told that the market is a living, breathing entity that reacts to supply and demand, a fair playing field where value is discovered through the honest exchange of goods and services. But this is the greatest illusion of our time. The transformation of your mindset begins the moment you realize that the market is not free. It is captured. It is a controlled environment, a stage where the actors know their lines, and the ending has often been written before the curtain even goes up. The market does not reward the best product or the most ethical company. It rewards those who control the three pillars of modern power: risk, information, and influence. The revelations we have uncovered about insider trading, dark pools, and high-frequency trading are not anomalies. They are the standard operating procedure. Think about the concept of privileged information. In a fair game, everyone sees the cards at the same time. In this game, the house sees your cards milliseconds before you do, and they use algorithms to front-run your decisions. They buy what you want to buy a fraction of a second before you, drive the price up, and sell it to you. It is a tax on your existence in the market. It is a skimming operation that happens billions of times a day, extracting value from your retirement account, your savings, and your labor, and transferring it to the balance sheets of a few dozen firms. But here is where the journey into the truth gets truly dark. We tend to think that these financial giants want a stable, healthy economy. We assume they want peace and prosperity because that's what is good for the average person. But the bastidors, the backstage reality, tells a different story. Stability is boring. Stability is low margin. If the market is flat, if the economy is predictable, it is very hard to make obscene amounts of money quickly. The true model of Wall Street is not built on growth. It is built on volatility. This is the key phrase you need to burn into your mind. Profit is not in stability. Profit is in chaos. And whoever controls the chaos controls the game. Understanding this changes everything. It explains why we see these recurring cycles of boom and bust. They are not accidents of nature, they are harvests. The system needs a crisis every few years to reset the board. When a crisis hits, whether it's a pandemic, a housing crash, or a tech bubble bursting, the average person panics. The small business owner goes bankrupt. The family sells their stocks at the bottom because they are terrified of losing everything. That is the impact on the population. But for the smart money, this is the shopping season. This is when they swoop in and buy up real assets, houses, companies, land, patents, for pennies on the dollar. They transfer the real wealth of the world into their hands, using money the government just printed to bail them out. It creates a sickening cycle where the failures of the economy are actually the success metrics of the financial elite. They engineer the complexity that leads to the crash, they bet on the crash happening, and then they get paid to clean up the mess they created. It is the arsonist running the fire department. And because they own the narrative, they spin it as saving the system. They tell you that without them, the ATMs would stop working and society would collapse. It is a hostage situation disguised as a banking service. This journey of realization forces us to confront the fact that our decisions have been manipulated for decades. The advice to buy and hold, to trust the experts, to diversify, while not always bad advice, it is often designed to keep you passive. They want you to be the dumb money, the liquidity that allows them to exit their positions when the market tops out. They need someone to sell to when the bubble's about to burst, and that someone is usually the pension funds and the retail investors. The criminality here is institutional because it has been codified. When a mafia boss bribes a judge, it's a scandal. When a bank spends millions lobbying Congress to deregulate derivatives, it's political engagement, but the result is the same. The law is bent to favor the powerful. The impact is that we live in a two-tiered justice system. There's one set of laws for the person who steals a car, and a completely different set of negotiations for the entity that steals an economy. They have successfully rebranded theft as financial engineering. You have to understand that this isn't about a few bad apples. It is about the orchard. The soil itself is toxic. The incentive structure of Wall Street is designed to maximize short-term profit at the expense of long-term stability, human well-being, and ethical standards. If you are a CEO and you don't exploit a loophole to boost the stock price, you get fired. The system purges morality because morality is inefficient. It slows down the velocity of money. As we stare at this reality, it can feel overwhelming. It can make you feel like a pawn on a chessboard where the kings and queens can move anywhere they want. But realizing the board is rigged is the only way to stop losing. You stop playing their game by their rules. You start looking for the hidden truth in every headline. You stop reacting to the manufactured fear and start observing the mechanics of the manipulation. You become awake in a world of sleepwalkers. This transformation of perspective is your shield. Once you see the strings, the puppets stop looking so scary. You realize that their power relies entirely on our ignorance and our compliance. They need us to believe the lie. They need us to believe that the chaos is accidental, not engineered. But now you know better. You know that the volatility is the product, and you are the resource being mined. This leads us to a critical junction. We have dissected the history, the methods, and the true nature of the beast. But knowledge without action is just trivia. The question now is, what do we do with this? How do we navigate a world where the house always wins? Is there a way to flip the script, or at least to step out of the blast zone before the next explosion? We are about to pivot to the practical application of this knowledge, to the strategy of survival and resistance. But first, I need to know that you are still with me, that you have digested this hard truth. Drop a comment below. I see the chaos. Let me know that you understand the true nature of the game we are playing, because what comes next is about how to position yourself so that when they shake the tree, you are not the one falling out. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because staying in a state of indignation isn't enough. Anger is a natural reaction when we discover the hidden truth about how the machinery of the world operates. But anger alone doesn't protect your patrimony. In fact, the system loves your anger just as much as it loves your fear, because emotional people make irrational decisions. They sell at the bottom out of panic or buy at the top out of euphoria. So, the most rebellious act you can commit against a system rigged to harvest you is to refuse to be a victim. We need to initiate a transformation in your mindset, moving from the position of a startled prey to that of a calculated observer. We are talking about building a personal survival manual that functions as a shield against the weapons of mass financial destruction we've discussed so far. This isn't about becoming a conspiracy theorist living in a bunker. It's about becoming a sophisticated player who knows the house rules better than the dealer. The first pillar of this manual is understanding that financial history is not a dusty collection of dates, but a map of the future. The revelations of the past are the spoilers for tomorrow. The markets operate in cycles that are terrifyingly repetitive. The exact same mechanisms that caused the crash of 1929, the dot-com bubble of 2000, and the housing crisis of 2008 are being oiled and prepped right now. They changed the names of the financial products. Yesterday it was subprime mortgages. Today it might be collateralized loan obligations or some new derivative tied to AI. But the structure of the scam is identical. When you study the bastidors of these historical events, you stop saying, "This time is different." You realize that this time is exactly like the last time, just with faster computers and better marketing. This historical awareness gives you the superpower of anticipation. While the herd is being led to the slaughterhouse by the news cycle, you're already spotting the exit signs because you've seen this movie before. But history is just the context. The second principle of our survival is understanding how money actually moves, not how they tell you it moves. There is a massive difference between the narrative economy, what you hear on TV about inflation, employment, and GDP, and the liquidity economy, which is the real river of capital flowing beneath the surface. The impact of understanding this distinction is life-changing. You start to ignore what central bankers say in their press conferences and start watching what they do with their balance sheets. You stop listening to the stock tip from the pundits who are paid to be wrong, and you start tracking the insider selling reports of the CEOs. The smart money leaves footprints. They can hide their intentions, but they cannot hide the volume. Learning to read the flow of capital is like learning to track an animal in the wild. It turns the forest from a place of danger into a place of resources. This is where your journey shifts from gambling to strategy. You stop reacting to the noise and start responding to the signal. And this leads us directly to the third and perhaps most critical principle: identifying the patterns of manipulation. The market is a theater of emotions engineered to trigger specific psychological responses. There is a setup before every fall. Usually, it begins with a period of unnatural calm, followed by euphoric rise where everyone from your taxi driver to your dentist is talking about how easy it is to make money. This is the trap being baited. The system needs maximum optimism to offload its risk onto the public. If you can identify this pattern, the artificial hype, the sudden proliferation of experts, the pressure to get in now or miss out forever, you can spot the hand of the architect behind the chaos. This ability to recognize the setup shields you from the decisions that destroy wealth. It allows you to stand firm when the world is melting down, knowing that the volatility is not the end of the world, but a transfer of ownership that you can position yourself to benefit from, or at least survive unscathed. Adopting this manual creates a profound divide. You stop being part of the mass and become part of a community of the informed. There is a distinct feeling of relief when you realize you are no longer playing their game by their rules. You are building your own game. The revelations we share here are designed to arm you with the intellectual self-defense necessary to navigate this minefield. We are creating a space where the goal isn't just to make a quick buck, but to understand the mechanics of the machine so thoroughly that it can no longer grind you down. It's about sovereignty. When you understand that the inflation eating your savings is a policy choice, not an accident, you change how you save. When you understand that a market crash is a liquidity event, not a judgment on the economy's soul, you change how you invest. This transformation is permanent. Once you see the strings, you can never unsee them. The beauty of this approach is that it turns fear into focus. Instead of worrying about what the Federal Reserve will do next, you prepare for all outcomes. You become anti-fragile. The system thrives on your fragility, on your debt, on your need for the next paycheck to survive. By applying these principles, you slowly remove the leverage they have over you. It is a journey of reclaiming your independence, dollar by dollar, decision by decision. And the most powerful part is that you are not doing this alone. We are waking up to this reality together, comparing notes and sharing the backstories of what we see. This collective intelligence is a threat to the institutional model because their power relies on us being isolated and confused. When we are connected and clear-headed, the dynamic changes. We stop being the resource to be mined and become the obstacle to be reckoned with. However, having the manual is one thing. Executing it is another. Theory is safe, but practice is where the real challenge lies. We have talked about the what and the why, but we need to confront the how in a very practical sense. Because even with all this knowledge, the emotional pull of the system is designed to be irresistible. They have psychologists and algorithms working 24/7 to break your discipline. So, how do we operationalize this survival guide in a way that withstands the pressure of the real world? How do we take these high-level concepts and turn them into a daily routine that protects us? Drop a comment below. I am taking control. Let me know that you are ready to stop being a passenger and start driving, because we are about to turn the key on the final part of this strategy. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, and I know that realizing the extent of this rigged game can feel heavy. It's a lot to process when you see the machinery of the white-collar mafia laid bare. But the fact that you are still here, listening to this right now, tells me something very important about you. It tells me that you are unsatisfied with the easy lies they feed us on the evening news. You value the hard truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And that is a rare quality. That is exactly why we built this channel. We are here to be a resource for the people who want to see behind the curtain, for those who refuse to be the dumb money at the poker table. If you want to continue this investigation with me, if you want to make sure you are always one step ahead of their next move rather than reacting to it, make sure you are subscribed. It's not just about clicking a button. It's about deciding to stay on the side of the informed. And If this conversation sparked something in you, if it confirmed a suspicion you have had for a long time about how the system really works, go ahead and hit that like button. It is a small gesture, but it is how we find each other in this algorithm. It tells me that this is the kind of revelation you are looking for. I really want to know who stuck with me through this deep dive, because the people who finish these videos are the ones who are truly ready to change their mindset. If you are still here, leave a comment down below saying, "I am awake." It's a simple code, but it lets me know who the serious thinkers are in this community. I read every single one of them.